to grow as people who work with students and parents. Just pray that you would be with us and just continue to refine us and give us guidance as we try our best to help students have a faith that sticks. It's through Christ we pray. Amen. If you wouldn't mind reading Mark 10, 42 to 45, that would be awesome. And if you guys just want to listen along or read as well, you can. Yes.
Jesus called them together in John. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regard to rulers, the Gentiles' Lord is over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be saved, but to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many."
Thank you. I also wanted to open up with another prayer, and this is kind of an older prayer. So this is what I have our students do. Anytime I do a prayer, like a psalm, I want them to close their eyes, and I want them to listen to the words, okay? So I promise I'm not going to throw anything at you. I don't have like a Nerf gun. I'm not going to laugh or mock you. So just close your eyes for a second. I just want you to listen to these words, really short. O Lord, our Heavenly Father, whose blessed Son came not to be served, but to minister to others. Bless, we ask thee, all who, following in his steps, give themselves to the service of others, that with wisdom, patience, and courage, they may serve in his name to the suffering, the friendless, and the needy. For the love of him who laid down his life for us, the same thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with thee and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Well, what I think is really important about this whole topic, this idea of service that sticks, is that my guess is that you all are doing things in your ministry or in your family where you are serving other people. And so the question comes, that is an awesome shade. That is amazing. I love it. The question comes up, why is it important to have service as part of the essential kind of foundation for Sticky Faith? Why is it important for families, for students to be out in their community serving, going on mission trips, spending time at food banks and distribution? Why is it important that they're doing that rather than other things? And so we're going to answer that question, and we're going to talk about ways that you all can take service to a new level, to where the service opportunities you guys are offering your students will begin to shape and form them into the image of Jesus, rather than simply offering service opportunities that just kind of go to a dead end. So the question is, why is having service as part of your family or your youth group's DNA essential for Sticky Faith? I wanted to read from, I don't know if we've got it up there. Yeah, just go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. This is a report from the Harvard Medical School teaching hospital, where basically it's a bunch of nurses who are, kind of bringing in details and trying to figure out results and all that stuff. And this is what they said. They said, here's the deal with people who serve or volunteer regularly. They have a higher functional ability, meaning that they are able to do more and get more out of themselves. They have lower rates of depression, and they have less incidence for heart disease. Now you're saying to yourself, what does this have to do with youth ministry? I don't think that many of my students are going to have heart disease anytime in the near future. You might, because you're dealing with them, but your youth are probably not. Well, here's what we want to talk about. not even from a holy standpoint or a church standpoint is service important, but from a bodily standpoint, from a very carnal, worldly standpoint, service is essential for people to thrive. This is what, go ahead and click the next slide if you can, please. This is what the research came out to say. Backslide. There we go. It says voluntary association membership, basically meaning when a person gives themselves to serve, contributes to decreased psychological distress and buffers the negative consequences of stressors. It increases life satisfaction and decreases depression. So you see here, when someone is immersed in something that is bigger than themselves, a service opportunity, they're going on a mission trip, they're a part of like a quarterly rotation of going to a homeless shelter, or going to, like for instance, Loaves and Fishes is down the road. It's basically like a place where people eat, and we try to feed some of the people who don't have the means to eat on a regular basis. That when people do that it actually stresses them out less. It kind of brings the stress level down. And it actually kind of brings their life satisfaction up. It makes them feel like they have purpose, that they have a vision for where they're supposed to be going. It decreases depression, and depression in a lot of our students, at least the students I run into, is very much they feel like they're lost. They feel like they don't have a direction they're going in. They feel like they really can't contribute to anything. And so you see here from a very worldly standpoint, even if we throw all the spiritual out the side and throw Jesus and his example out the side, that serving is part of the way that we were created to be. We were created to be servants. There's something that comes out of us when we serve. Go ahead and the next slide, Adam. This is a research that came out of University of Michigan. And it said this. It said, it came from public school students. So this is kind of a wide variety of students. It said that middle school and high school students who engaged in quality service learning programs showed increases in measure of personal and social responsibility, communication, and a sense of educational competence, which, breaking that down to kind of my level, means they feel like they're responsible for their peers and themselves. They're able to talk and deal with their peers better, and they actually want to learn. They want to grow. They're interested in trying to better themselves. It also said that students who engaged in service learning were more likely to treat each other kindly, help each other, and care about doing their best. So this is not a church study at all. This is very much the University of Michigan has thrown this out there, and they're saying when students are involved in service opportunities, we see that they treat each other better, that they're better than what they were before, that they're willing to help each other, that they care about excelling in whatever they're doing. And it actually kind of increases their sense of self-esteem and being able to kind of have self-worth in themselves. Go ahead, next slide. This is from U.S. News. I know I'm throwing a lot of this stuff at you. We will get to the spiritual side. But I want to show you that down at the very core, that service is essential for human beings. So this is what Dr. Mark Snyder says. This is in U.S. News. He says, people who volunteer tend to have higher self-esteem, psychological well-being, and happiness. All of these things go up as their feelings of social connectedness. And we're going to talk about social connectedness because that is one of the things that, as we're talking about offering service opportunities that stick, that really make an impact. Social connectedness is extremely important. It is essential. It is the pinnacle of what makes service opportunities stick. So when they're doing that, those feelings of social connectedness go up, which in reality it does. It also improves their health and even their longevity. Here are the 5 main reasons. Oh yeah, that's it right there. The 5 main reasons a person volunteers. Now this is not by a Christian guy. This is from U.S. News. Dr. Alan Omoto is a professor of psychology from Claremont, which is in California. And he said this, here's the 5 reasons that people serve. They serve because they want understanding. They're trying to desire to learn new things. They're trying to improve their scope of understanding. They're trying to acquire knowledge. They're trying to, just kind of be more well-rounded, some of us might say. they're also wanting to boost their self-esteem. Because when, for better or for worse, when you and I do something like that, we feel better, And it's not a bad thing. I've heard some youth ministers say, well, you don't need to do service projects because it makes you feel good. You need to do it because Jesus told you to do it. Well, get over yourself. It makes you feel good, and Jesus called you to do it. So shrug it off. So it makes people feel valued. It makes them feel important. And that is important in the life of teenagers. A lot of students have a very, very low self-esteem. They think of themselves very little. Compared to their peers, they feel this big. And so it makes people feel better, and they feel like they have stability in their life. It also develops a person. When you and I serve, we acquire skills. I went on a mission trip last summer to Costa Rica, and I hadn't studied Spanish for probably about 6 years. And so I'm sitting there in a school with a bunch of Costa Rican kids, and we're trying to teach them English, and they know very, very like Pequeña English. And so I'm trying to relate to them and trying to pull out my Spanish for them, and it's very muddy, and they're looking at me like, gringo, what is up with this guy? Like, what the heck? But it makes you have to kind of acquire new tasks and new skills. You have to be able to kind of sharpen yourself to be able to help others and deal with others. It tests your capabilities. You find yourself in a circumstance that's not very comfortable because you might not feel exactly, in place. I remember we took a group of students a couple years ago to Chicago, Rockford, which is a suburb of Chicago, and we brought them down into Chicago, into Chinatown, to do some kind of relational work. And our students, had never seen anything like it. Chinatown, there were like chickens hanging from the ceilings of restaurants, and people were just trying to sell them stuff on street corners. And we were telling them, get to know people. You're in a safe environment. There are plenty of adults, but we want you to go out of your way to talk. And so you could see those students kind of going out on a limb, and they would clump together, and they would start talking. And they would start testing the waters out a little bit because it wasn't comfortable. The same thing we do, we'll talk about this in a little bit. There's a place called the Appalachian Christian Village, which is right behind us. And it's basically an assisted living facility for our elderly folk. And we send our students over there, and it's amazing to see them interact because the first time we sent students there, they were like, well, I don't do old people. And we're like, well, you're going to get to know these people because we're going there, every other month for years. And so now our 10th grade boys, we could give them any opportunity, and they're like, oh, no, we want to go with the old people. Like, that's where we like to be. Because they have to stretch their horizons a bit. They have to stretch their comfort zone. It also brings a sense of community. When people are serving, it makes them feel a part of something. It makes them feel a part of a mission or a goal or a bigger vision, okay? So you feel like you're contributing to your piece of the world. You're doing your job to make it better, which is important, especially in the church. We're huge proponents of church and being a part of the community and being local and focused on local needs. And part of that is that students need to feel like they're contributing to their backyard, their neighbors. And also humanitarian values, which is why a lot of people would say, the church does what it does. It's serving and helping others with a strong religious component. We go to the next slide. Here's the key truth that we are going to wrestle with for a few moments. Service is essential. And I don't mean essential lightly. I mean essential. I've seen many youth groups, and I've been with many families. And it's interesting to me that the youth groups who struggle, or even, they don't even have to be small. They could be huge. They could be a youth group of 300 people. But they don't have a vision, and the vision, isn't focused on anything service related. It's event based. So you throw on a good show, you've got good music, you've got somebody who's really charismatic, but at the end of the day, they don't feel like they belong, they fit in, they're contributing to anything. And so service is essential in the social, psychological, and physical formation of young men and women. That cannot be argued from a secular standpoint or from a religious standpoint, because both worlds declare very clearly that service benefits people. That when people are in serving capacities, that they are brought to better versions of themselves. So, here's what I'd like you to do for a few moments, because this will help me. I want you to take a few moments you've got probably paper in your folders. So what I want you to do is I want you to write down all of the different opportunities that you offer in your youth group, in your church, as a part of your family, anything that is service related that you do in a year, a calendar year, I want you to write down, okay? So I know that can be like, oh goodness, I have to go back. But think through, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that for a few moments. So I'm going to give you a second. I feel like I need to play music during this, you know? Like, because they always have like waiting music. Adam, what do you think?
Go for it.
Play some Taylor Swift or something? Some Kanye, I think?
Jeopardy theme song.
Oh, Jeopardy theme song? I was listening to James Taylor last night when I was driving back from Knoxville, and that just chills you out. So I don't want you guys to fall asleep on me. But yeah, let's do that. I'll take a moment. I'm just going to take a seat. So you guys take a moment, write those things down, and then in a second we'll get that list together. Just look up whenever you're done, because I don't want to like sit here awkwardly waiting if you're like done, if everybody's done. Let's see, and you know what's sad? I don't think this outlet works. That's going to make me sad. Okay, that's okay. Okay. Some of the things that you wrote down. Let's go to this board. And just feel free, I was telling my students, just shout it out. So if there's anything that you guys can think of, let's say a yearly calendar. And don't be bashful. I mean, if you're saying we do like 100,000 things, awesome, kudos to you. If you say we have a mission trip every summer and that's what we do, that's fine. So just start naming off some stuff. Okay, drama team, great. Camp, okay.
We give away meals.
Okay. Who do you give away meals to?
We actually just started giving away to businesses.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to put meal
Just deliver them.
giveaway. Okay. So say neighbors. Are they neighboring businesses? It's like places around your church? Okay, cool.
Clothes giveaway.
Okay, yeah.
Clothes giveaway,
So like a
yeah.
clothing distribution.
Yes.
We have kind of a community garden that we grow vegetables and give away.
And that actually, I know at least at Emmanuel, is a growing trend. I know a couple churches that are doing community gardens where they're able to kind of give, food out to their neighbors or people who, which is a really cool idea. What else? Any other thoughts come to mind?
Just building community,
Okay.
make friendship with friends and neighbors.
Okay. I'm going to try and put it into words. You tell me what you think. Would you say? I'm trying to think.
Home visits.
Home visits. Would you say that, or building? Let's see. Let's.
It can be that.
Yes,
Okay. All right. I don't want to put it in a box.
what we call links of friendship.
Okay. Let's do that. Links of friendship.
Our youth often brings communion to shut-ins.
Yeah. Do any of you guys go on mission trips? Anybody?
In the past, but not this past school.
Because we're going to talk about mission trips.
Vision trip.
Because I don't know if you guys know, but mission trips, short-term mission trips are a big, there's kind of like a clear disagreement in different kind of schools of thought and whether or not youth groups should bring short-term missions, which I will tell you why you can and how it will be impactful. Any other thoughts?
Do nursing home visits.
Yeah.
And the shoebox. Operation Christmas.
Nursing home, yeah, it's starting to look like Hebrew here, sorry. And you said, Operation Christmas Child. Which we were getting ready to kick off here, Operation. I'm gonna try and be hipster and write Xmas. And that's for Christ, so. Anything else? You guys can think of? That's better than the list I came up with. Let's move to my slide. I just came up with a couple. I said, let's see. Play from current slide. I said short-term mission trips, so local in the States and abroad. A lot of youth groups will go. For instance, we've had youth groups that have gone to Costa Rica in the past, Africa. We're actually bringing a group this summer to Honduras. So short-term missions. Regular participation at a soup kitchen, food distributor. So maybe that's on a rotation. I know at our church, our Sunday school, our Sunday schools do a lot of work with the Melting Pot, which is at Muncie. And so we're on a rotation there. Use of musical talents in the praise band, and so that kind of goes along with drama, but the use of gifts inside the church, which is extremely important. And then I had you guys list your other opportunities. But here's the question that we have to answer, because here's the deal. All of these things are good. None of these things we'll look at and someone would say, you're saying that you're visiting a nursing home? That's horrible. No one would say that, or at least no one in their right mind. So the question comes out, how do we know whether or not our service opportunities are helping students have a faith that sticks? How do we know that? If you had a parent come up to you, or you had a youth sponsor come up to you and you said, hey, tell me how we know that the money we're pouring in, the time we're pouring into X, Y, Z, whatever the ministry is, how, can you tell me whether it's making a difference or not?
Life's changing.
Okay, life's changing, yes. And we're going to talk about, and you guys might actually have some of this implemented, the way that we get there, the way that we get to that life change. Because my guess is you've probably seen some service opportunities where there wasn't much life change. Maybe, you kind of go in, you do your time, and then you're out. I knew a youth minister who used to go on mission trips basically as kind of like a vacation. So, you'd kind of go, well, I want to go to China this year, so we're going to bring a group to China. And I want to go to Africa this year, so we're going to go to Africa. And I want to, and that's when I would draw the line and say, I don't know if that's life-changing, I don't know if that's really bringing out the best in students. Because what it tells students is, yeah, you can go, and sightsee for a couple of days and, be a burden on that missionary for that week. Or we can try and find a way to answer the question, how do we get a mission trip to stick? Does that make sense? So this is the question we're going to wrestle with the rest of the time, is how do we answer the question, how do we make sure these things stick? Because all these things are good. Every single one of these things in some way shapes or forms students. It does. But I have seen students who have done these things and they still fall out of the church at 18. I have. And it's probably not, simply because of that. But I have met students who have had that life transformation on a, whatever it is. We did a local mission trip here. It was really low key, and someone was like, that's the best thing ever. I'm like, that cost me the least amount of money. And we didn't do, how is that the best? And it was because there was something in that they connected with, that they made real relationships, which we'll talk about here soon. Let's go to the next thing. Here are the findings from Sticky Faith. And so, I don't know if you guys have read the book Sticky Faith. It's a really good book. Chap co-wrote it with Kara Powell. But here's one of the big findings. Short-term mission trips hardly make any real difference in life change over the long haul. You're nodding your head. Does that make sense? Is that echo like your experiences?
Yes.
Yeah. Because a lot of times, and I'm as guilty as anybody on this, a lot of times we pour so much time and energy and effort into this mission trip so that it goes so well, so that 7 days is just ceaseless. And we get back from it and all of our students go, that was cool. And that's it. and it ends there. And it was just like in the same way that you would go to like a sandals resort and be like, that was a great vacation we did, and it ends. That is kind of the experience. And so Sticky Faith says, here's the deal. Short-term missions, the way they're being done now, they really don't make that big of a difference in a student's life over the long haul. Because of the short amount of time, most short-term missions are a week, maybe two, but mostly one. Students aren't able to build a strong relationship with the people they're serving. What's the buzzword that we said? We said social connectedness. That looks like that. Social connectedness. That's key. Students aren't able to build relationships with the people that they're serving. And so when they're simply just doing a nice deed for somebody, they're not able to see that person grow, to share a burden with that person, to be able to share Christ to that person because they're on such a short time frame. It'd be like me and my wife. Me and my wife have been together for almost 4 years. Been married for only a couple months. But it'd be like if you crammed us into a room for a week and you said, all right, let's get married. It'd be like, whoa, we're not there yet. It's kind of the same way. You try to jam in so much into a short time, and because of that short time, it's hard to build those relationships. It's hard to get that social connectedness that students want. They'll build it with other students. So they'll build it with their peers. And they'll say, that was an awesome trip, wasn't it? But they won't build it with the people that they're helping, which is where we see that life-transforming happen. So here's the deal. This is what Sticky Faith tells us. It says that there is a need for a more comprehensive approach to short-term missions. And this is huge. I would bring this to your youth minister, to your church. This is extremely big. When I read this, it was like aha moment. And I've been doing youth ministry for 5 years, and I read this and I was like, oh man, we're not doing this. We need to come with a comprehensive approach, an approach that kind of serves the whole picture, the whole student. Not just our student, but also the community. And basically, it's broken down to three things. It's broken down into time periods. Before, during, and after. So basically what they're saying is, we always look at the mission trip as the during. You get there, you do nice things, you feed kids, you play soccer, at a school, you teach English at a school, and then you're done. But what Sticky Faith tells us is that we are missing the bookends of that experience. That if we don't do the bookends of that experience, it will always end up being a nice, cool trip that happened. But it will never create that life, changing experience that we all want, that we're all trying to aim for. So this is what they call it. They call this framing. Before is called framing. During, I think I have it as experience. Yeah, experience or reflection. And after, ongoing transformation. So let's break this down, because this is really important for mission trips. This is a really blurry graph, but you'll get the idea. Before, framing, the whole idea of framing is that we want to set students up to better understand that culture, to better understand what they're feeling when they go into that culture, to be able to process with them why it's important for them to go serve. So the whole idea is we frame the experience. We want to put it in a clear package so they understand why they're going and what they're doing. We don't simply send 20 kids over, to Honduras and say, yeah, we fed some kids and we played soccer. Okay. We frame it for them. We tell them Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve. We tell them it's important because there are people who do not have food, or they do not have clothes, or they're living off of less than $2 a day. It's important that we go help those people. We tell them it's important to break down, barriers. So whether that's ethnicity barriers, whether that's language barriers, because Christ breaks down all the barriers, and brings all people to Him. So we frame it for them. We give them a clear image and a picture of what it looks like. During is all about the experience. And this is so important. I have messed this up 100 times on mission trips. You get so caught up in all the details. You get so caught up in trying to get students from here to here and making sure no one's slapping anybody and no one got lost on a Costa Rican bus and all these things that we forget the experience. We forget to ask students, tell me what's going on in your mind right now. What are you thinking? This would be like asking questions like, so what was the hardest thing you had to deal with today? What was the best thing that happened in your day? How did you see God work today? You know, what opposition did you have? Were you able to share Christ with anybody? If so, what did that look like? How did people respond when you served them? You help students be able to flesh out their experience. Because honestly, if we're not there to help them flesh that out, they're going to simply brush it off. We have to help them to see that every single experience that they're having during that week or during that 2 weeks is important, that it's shaping and forming them. So we help them reflect. And then after, and this is where I think we lose the mark most, is after. Because I'll be honest with you, I get home from a mission trip, doesn't matter if it's local or global or whatever, I crash for about 15 to 18 hours. I go home and I sleep and I watch college football or I watch movies or whatever, and I'm just like, we got done with it. Praise the Lord. No one got hurt. Everybody's back safely. But we missed the after party. We missed the celebration. We missed the transformation because we were so focused on that short amount of time, that week, that we don't look back. We don't celebrate. So what does this after piece look like, this ongoing transformation? It would be saying things like, how do you take what you did on that mission trip and bring it home? Tell us what you learned on that mission trip that's going to be applicable for you when you go to school. In what ways were you stretched that you think you're going to be stretched when you go home? So you take that experience that seems far away. It doesn't have to be, global. It could honestly be, you did a mission trip at Charlotte. How do you take what happened there and be able to bring some of those pieces home to where you're learning from that experience you had? It's not, I learned and I'm done. It's this ongoing transformation. It's things are going to happen in my life now, and if I look back to what I did and start to think through some of those things, it's going to better me in the long run. Go ahead and, yeah. The second one is that service is stickier when it's close to home. And this is true. This is very, very, very true. We actually had to kind of come to terms with this at First Christian probably about 2 years ago. We looked at all of our ministry and our programs and our events, and we had a lot of cool flashy stuff, and there's a whole bunch of all-nighters and all this stuff, and we had this mission trip that was really great, but at the end of the day, there was not regular things that we were doing in a very formational basis here in our backyard. We weren't telling students, it's important for you to be here, to be local. Mission is local. It does not simply mean going, it means as you're going. So that's what, one of the big findings is that we need to start focusing on home. When students serve in their literal neighbors, the service has a bigger impact in their faith walks. I have a card in my office from a very old lady who one of our students brought a flower to 2 weeks ago. And you would have thought that flower was, just like a huge check, from Ed McMahon, right? It was just amazing. But, it was a flower. And the student just went there and listened to her talk about, her kids and gave her a flower. I'm sure it was really awkward because, it's probably a 9th grade boy who doesn't have social skills. But that experience shaped them. Because what we did was we all came back. We came back at our youth building and we were eating and we said, all right, we want to share stories. Tell us what happened. We had some crazy stories. We had a story of a boy, one of our boys, Michael, was given the flower to this older lady, and she started crying, and so he went in to go give her a hug. She asked for a hug, and she grabbed his butt, and so he's like, I didn't know how to handle that, and I was like, well, she's not going to jail, man. She's like 90, so they're going to side with her every single time. But those are funny, that you share stories. For them, that's important. It's important that that they're able to do something here. That service isn't I have to pay $1,500 to go somewhere. That service is I can do it here and now. And I can do it in my backyard. And I can grab a couple of my friends and go serve. You know, it doesn't take long. We did a partnership. Adam and I did a partnership with two churches in this area: Grace Fellowship, which is a great church, and Tri-Cities Baptist, which is another great church. And what we decided to do was we just took a Saturday out and we said, we're going to go over to Science Hills campus and we're just going to clean. We're going to clean all the trash up. So we got all of our students together. They had never been together at the same place ever. Because for years, there had been the stigma of like, well, we don't work with other churches, which is stupid. So we broke down that. We brought everybody in and we said, okay, here's the deal. This is your turf. You know, this is your home. This is where you go to school 5 days out of the week. And look at all this trash that's here that was left by your peers. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and clean it up. And when you go to school on Monday, you're going to know that you made an impact on your campus. That students might not go, look how clean this grass is. But they might recognize that something's different. And that you guys were you know, the elements of change. That you went on the campus and changed it for better. That makes a huge difference. More than, you know, planning 6 months for a big trip or any of those things. So service is stickier when it's close to home. And we're going to talk through some of that in a little bit. Third, students want to be involved in service and justice projects and opportunities. I hear from parents all the time, I just don't know if my student likes to, you know, it makes them feel uncomfortable, or they'd rather go to your worship service than go to your, you know, your service opportunities. And honestly, we found that to be completely false. A couple years ago, I was doing middle school ministry, and we started implementing these things we called Night of Service, which is basically once every couple months, we would go into the community, we'd just give, you know, our sponsors keys to vans, and we'd send them off into places. So they'd go work with Johnson City Parks and Rec. We'd bring cookies over to the firefighters. We'd go over to Appalachian Christian Village and the Towers. And I tell you, the attendance for that was higher than any of the other things we did. Students would actually say, Josh, you're teaching, we want to have the Night of Service. And I would be like, ouch, but I'm glad you love Jesus and you want to serve. But that's the truth. They want to serve. They want to be challenged. I have never sat down with a student and been like, I just don't like when you challenge me. You know, I don't like when you challenge me. I just like being comfortable. Students love it. I honestly, we did the melting pot this summer, and I had 7 or 8 students. And I told them, I said, I don't want you to be near each other this whole time. I want you to go and talk to people. Sit down, talk to people, listen to their lives. You know, they might smell, they might be completely different than you, they might deal with, you know, some maybe mental disorders, but I want you to sit and talk. And they loved it. They ate it up. They said, when's the next time we're doing it? So there's this idea, this preconceived notion that students hate service. That's not true. If you talk to the majority of your students and you say, here's the deal, we can either, you know, do an all-nighter, or we can go into the community and serve. You'll get some of those that are like, all-nighter, huh? But you'll get a lot of them who'll say, no, I like that. I like being challenged. We had more high school students attend serving things than we did our all-nighter last year. That's just the way, you know, that our students work. So Sticky Faith proves otherwise. It proves that students want to be challenged, that they need to be challenged. Let's move on to the next. So what implications does this have on our ministries and our families? Adam, you know what time it is? I don't want to go over.
11:58.
Okay, all right. I'll make sure that we're out early so you guys can get lunch first. Because I always loved it when teachers did that for me. Grant, my intern's going, yeah. So what implications does this have on our ministries or our families? First, you as a family or your ministry should find some sticky causes that your students connect with. I know when I did an internship up in Maryland at a church called Mountain Christian Church, the big thing with the student ministry was Rafa House, which is this organization that helps kind of bring women out of sex trafficking. And I mean, students just, they wore bracelets, they wore t-shirts, they threw a banquet where they raised money for it. I mean, it was it for them. Years and years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, there was a guy named Zach Hunter who started this organization called Loose Change to Loosen Change, which basically he just put a bunch of cups out in different restaurants and different gas stations so he could raise money to end modern day slavery. It doesn't have to be one of those. It could be Habitat. It could be Operation Christmas Child. You might have a local, parachurch organization that your students love. I know for us, our students love the Melting Pot. They loved it. I mean, it was it for them. So for us, that's a clear connection. Our students have that passion. So it'd be foolish of me not to create a partnership there, to make sure that we have a clear relationship with those people. So begin to think through that. I think it's great to ask your students, to ask your families, what are your passions? What makes you angry? I know for our students, man, what makes them angry is they get angry about the fact that there are students they go to school with who do not have jackets. They get angry about that. Because everybody should have a jacket. It's cold, So we had a student 2 years ago who did a raised jackets, and asked people for jackets, and we had over 300 jackets raised. So you need to find what those causes are. As a youth minister, as a parent, talk to them and say, tell me what makes you, get up and want to pursue this. Tell me what, you don't have to be the end all be all for everything service. So for instance, your ministry doesn't have to, pursue, freeing women from sex trafficking and, Melting Pot and this and that and after school program. It all just starts somewhere. Start a relationship somewhere. Create a bond somewhere with some organization. Next, serve together as a family or offer opportunities for families to serve together. So part of that's twofold. Serve together as a family, that's the parents. And youth ministers, you need to offer something where parents can serve together. Because here's the truth. I'll have a ton of kids who will come up and complain about their parents to me. But when they see their parents cleaning and they see their parents on their knees loving Jesus, doing something in service, they'll recognize that their parent actually, walks the walk, that they're actually invested. So just a couple ideas I threw out. I think doing a parent-student mission trip is great. I think if you can do one, it doesn't have to be far. You could just do, if you live here, I think doing one in Asheville or doing one in Kingsport or going to some of the Appalachian areas, I think that's great. Finding some way, because that'll send a message to parents. I can't tell you how many parents just like, golly, if you told me that I could partner with my kids and that we could go on a mission trip and I get to see them work and get to see how God's using them, man, I would be a huge advocate for your ministry, So offer that opportunity. I would say adopt a ministry as a family, or encourage some of the families in your ministry to adopt a ministry. So some of your ministry, yeah. So you might have, I know we have a woman in our ministry who is extremely passionate about adoption. She's adopted a couple kids herself, and that is her passion. I mean, she will text me and can we do a adoption awareness thing? I'm like, it's with sixth graders. They can't adopt anybody. They're sixth grade. She's like, no, I want to do it. Just adoption, whatever. Find a parent or parents who have that, and just let them run with it. Give them an opportunity to take ownership of something. And then I think quarterly family service nights, which we're leaning more towards, in place of regular fellowship. So you guys might have like a Wednesday night youth group or Wednesday night big event or groups or whatever. And honestly, what we have come to do is we just cancel everything. We say, we're done. We're going to cancel it. We're going to go out and serve. Which I think sends a message to students. Because I had a student ask me, they're like, well, don't you like teaching? I'm like, yeah, I do, but I like serving better. So I'd rather get into the community. And it sends the message to them that service is part of the DNA. It's part of the regular flow, and rhythm of a youth ministry, of a Christian. Let's move on. Make justice, its service, a process and not an event. And this is extremely important as you're planning. And it kind of goes back to this. Too many students experience justice or service as an event. So it's, I go serve at the mission trip. I go serve at the Melting Pot. I serve in the praise band. It's a clear event with a beginning and an end. It doesn't have ramifications for my life afterwards. It's an event. And so you have to start, as a youth worker or as a parent, begin to think through, how do I make this a process? How do I make this ongoing? How do I begin to help my student understand that what they're doing now has implications for what they'll be doing in the future, and it's forming and shaping them? So I ask questions like, before, as as the mission trip comes closer, what emotions are you having? What do you feel? A lot of students are scared. A lot of students are uneasy. We had students, who were going over to the Appalachian Christian Schools. They're kind of nervous. They don't know what to feel. They feel insecure about their gifts. They don't know what to say. And that's good. It's good for them to be able to express that. During, what was your favorite or hardest part? What new questions come up from your experience? So you help them to understand that that experience prompts other questions. It's just like the deeper you dive in your faith, the more questions you have. Not the more answers you have. I've never met somebody who's extremely deep in their faith and they're like, no, I have answers to everything. Yeah, Revelation, I got it down. Genesis, sure, whatever. You don't see that. You find people who are immersed deep and they say, I've got a lot of questions the deeper I dive. And that's okay. So beginning to ask them, what's going on in your mind as you're experiencing this? What questions come up? What's your favorite or hardest part? And then afterwards, how did God work through you? What does this say about how God might want to work through you at home? Beginning to look and tie, their present to the future, and beginning to help them see that it's all part of one big story. It's not, I go on the mission trip, it's done, or I go on the service week, it's done, or I go on a service night, or I go to, camp, or I go to a meal giveaway, and that's it. It's all of it's part of a process. It's shaping and forming students. Let's move on to the next one. This is what I wanted to hone in on. And this is something that I've actually made a decision in our ministry to change our whole mission trip strategy based on this. Is this, to develop ongoing relationships with the people you are serving. To develop ongoing relationships with the people you are serving. And what do I mean by this? This is what I mean. It's great if students go and hand out bottled waters downtown. But if they don't plan on going every month and handing bottles downtown or creating some relationships with those people beyond that, they're not really going to have a heart for those people. They're not really going to feel a bond with those people. So what I would suggest is a relational element as a part of every single thing that you do service related. And I know some of those are hard. You're saying, well, we're building a house. Okay? Well, I would tell every single student that every single day they need to talk to somebody who is a part of that culture and find a way to connect with them as they're building that house. Or they need to ask, for help from somebody who's a part of that culture or part of that, city or whatever, to build a relationship with them as they're doing that. What this means is we need to plant down. Our church or our youth ministry decided that we were going to go to Honduras for 5 years to the same site, the same missions organization, because we wanted students to experience the opportunity of getting to know people, really getting to know people. So when they go back as, they go as a freshman, they come back as a junior or senior, they're going to know somebody. And that burden for Honduras, that burden for wherever it is, continues going on. It is not, we kind of go to this place and then we're going to this next place and this next place, kind of this tourist idea of mission trips. It's, you need to plant down somewhere. And you need to build relationships with people. I am somebody, I love construction stuff. I'm not really good at it, but I love building things because I like to be like, oh, it's different, it's a clear sign that something changed. But if you go somewhere and build something and they never hear from you again, what kind of impact did you make? So when students build real tangible relationships, they see their clear purpose. When they go to the same place, and that's why I would tell, if I'm telling a youth group or anything, I would say, find a couple ministries that you love, that your students love, and be there. You do not have to be at every single thing under the sun. Be at 2 places, be at 3 places, get to know names, get students to know names. And when you see that, you're going to see real change in your students' lives. So here's how I want to end real quick. And we don't have 10 to 15 minutes. So for the next couple of minutes, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to get together in groups of maybe in one group. Because there's only 6 or 7 of you. I'd like you to get together in a group, and I want us to answer the question, how does this sticky service look in your context? So what does it look like now that you've kind of heard some of this stuff about process and being able to kind of get rid of some of the old, ways of looking at mission trips and service opportunities and look with new. What does it look like for you now? So what does it look, if that means you have 5 students in your youth group, what does that look like? If that means you have 500 students in your youth group, or you've got a family of 6, what does it look like? So let's gather together for, we're running out of time. That stinks. Dang it. Because I see all the people walking, and I told you I was going to let you go, and now I'm in this conundrum of whether or not I should let you go. Do you guys just want to go? Grant, I really don't, it doesn't matter what you're saying. It's about these guys. Do you guys want to go, or would you rather stay? She wants to go.
I just,
Okay, all right.
before I go, I have a question.
Yes.
Well, you make justice for the service. I know there's people who's more task-oriented than
Yes.
people-oriented. How to make a shift and help them to integrate?
So you're saying, like, if a person is more task-oriented,
Yeah,
how do you help them to get
To be
beyond that?
more people-oriented.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would definitely partner them with someone who is more relation-oriented. And I would say, you two together are planning this. I know for me, I'm highly relational tasks. I mean, they're all right, and so it's helpful for me to get someone who's like, this is what needs to get accomplished, like my wife. It's like, there's 7 things that we need to do today. So what I would encourage you to do is, as you're planning events or as you're planning, I would not just have one person do it. I'd maybe have 2 or 3 and say, okay, here that, we need to talk about the tactical side, but we also need to talk about the relational side and seeing how those can overlap, because they can. I've seen youth ministries or who have gone into places, they've built houses or they've built schools, but they have a really close relationship with those people.
I like the plan 5 years or take longer to
Yeah.
build out relational discipleship, especially going back and
Yes.
knowing people.
And that's what even if it's not a global trip, even if it's local. I mean, we have groups who go to like Kentucky to do service. And I told Adam, man, I'd love him to be in Cincinnati for 5 years because that's where he wants to go. So I'd say, be in Cincinnati for 5 years. When you show up, I want them to be like, Adam, hey, what's up? And the students be like, oh, this is my place, rather than new experiences. There's value in that, but when it comes to service opportunities, I would shy away from that just because I think the pendulum has swung so much to the tourist, we're going to go to the coolest place so I can get the most students. And I would rather swing it back and say, why don't we get 10 students planted in Honduras and get those relationships built? Does that answer your question?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'm going to stay afterwards for a few minutes if you do. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks.